Hey, welcome everybody to the newest Bay Area sports podcast. Right?
Another one?
I can't say it's the best yet, but I can say it is officially
sports podcast.
It is officially the newest.
We probably have the nicest place to do the podcast from. I'd say this is a cool place.
Hence the name.
Yeah.
Hence the name. Sal Castaneda.
Scotty Reese.
You want to tell
the
us
Sports Cave with Sal and Scott? Is that it? Is that it, Jason? Jason's our producer there, sitting behind the glass, so to speak. Even though there's no glass here, there's a lot of other glass where alcohol lives in.
Well, yeah. See, you got to paint the picture, right? We decided on the name based partially on the venue.
What we're doing.
We are leaning on a pool table,
right?
As we do this, right? You got sort of the man cave elements going on. You got a closet full of booze about, 20 feet to my left, to your right. We got the big screen TV.
So discipline is going to be a theme of this podcast, right? Discipline. You come in here on a Friday and you don't want to be able to wreck your weekend right off the start. So
and the cherry on top is you have a caveman-looking producer.
Yep. There you go. Producer Jason Toops. Well, all right, Scotty, what do you want to get into? Because I think I know where you're going to head with this, and I'm okay with it.
Well,
and that is?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the obvious jumping off point, right? Mm-hmm. We're diving in. It's show number 1 for us, but it's essentially, game number 82 or thereabouts for Major League Baseball, right?
Yeah.
We're just past the midway point in the season, and we are very fortunate to have 2 teams not only in the hunt, but you might argue in the driver's seat, at least for a playoff spot.
Right.
And look, both the A's and Giants still very much have designs on their respective divisions. I think it is safe to say if you had asked us 3.5 months ago, we both would have expected, with regard to the A's, that we would be having this conversation here. They're probably about where we figured they would be, right there with the Astros. Giants, on the other hand, shockwaves, right?
Nope.
Could not have seen
Absolutely
this coming.
not.
The most homerish fan could not have seen this coming.
I think that the people who were thinking that the Giants would do well were couching that in the Giants would do well for who they are. In other words, they wouldn't lose 100 games. They'd lose, 80 games.
The bar was low.
Right. The bar was very low. And now here we are, and people are calling Farhan a genius, and they're calling Kapler, okay, they're not calling him names anymore, right?
They're not calling him names.
Calling him names anymore. So, yeah, and I saw this Twitter argument, fellas, the other day about how Farhan might be getting too much credit or he's overrated, and I don't agree with that, and I'll tell you why. Because even if the Giants were to sink right now, even if all of a sudden right now they just basically went on a big losing streak, they've already surpassed the expectations that I had for them as a longtime fan. We're beginning to see some progress here with the pitching, with the hitting. The hitting coach is actually doing a decent job, in my opinion. We have something to build on here if you're in the Giants fan base.
I mean, we're seeing a ton of progress. And the beauty of what's going on is it's a year early, right? This was supposed to be the discussion we were having a year from now in 2022 when all the contracts came off the books, the purse strings suddenly are loosened, right? And the Giants start spending again because, the Giants spent when they were winning World Series. Yes, they had a lot of homegrown talent. Yes, they made a lot of really prudent free agent acquisitions, under the radar, low-cost acquisitions, the Cody Rosses, the Pat Burrows, the guys that helped win them titles. But they spent money, right? Mm-hmm. They haven't spent the last few years as much as fans would have liked because they were waiting to get some of these contracts off the books.
Right.
Now, go time was supposed to be November 1st, 2021.
Right.
And here we are. We're a year ahead of schedule. So, look, that opens up a can of worms when it comes to, what do you do with Crawford? What do you do with Belt and Posey and all these guys? That's a discussion we can have and we will have along the way. But where we are now, from where I'm sitting, Farhan does look like a genius because when I see Wilmer Flores and I see Alex Dickerson and I see Steven Duggar and this whole roster of guys who would not have made you look twice in March,
right,
all succeeding to the level they are succeeding, right? Lamont Wade, right? And you think, geez, I mean, this isn't just because Posey and Crawford are playing back to all-star form. This is an entire roster that has so exceeded every reasonable expectation that you have to give some credit to the top.
Well, it gives you hope in case the Giants decide not to bring back a Brandon Crawford. It gives you hope that there is someone else, or Brandon Belt or Posey. These guys, obviously, they're on limited time, and it gives you hope that the franchise is not just going to sink farther down the line. I'm not sure. We talked about this kind of off the air, but if this is air, we talked about this before. But what are they going to do with a guy like Brandon Crawford, and when is that decision going to be made? We're at the halfway point. He's been playing great. Is that going to be sustainable? And if it is, and if we get to the end of August and he's still playing the way he's playing, what do we do then? What do they do?
We do cartwheels for starters, right? Because the Giants are winning. If Crawford and Posey continue at this pace,
right,
for 162 games, I think they win the division. And I could not have imagined saying that.
Right.
But look, the Dodgers are the 800-pound gorilla. They have been for years. Last year they made good. They cashed in. They won the title. Brought pretty much everybody back this year except for Kike Hernandez. Mm-hmm. Roster intact. Best roster in baseball, hands down.
Right.
But all of a sudden, you lose Dustin May, Tommy John surgery early on. He looked terrific in April. Okay, they're so deep. They've got 7 starting pitchers. Sure. It's all good. They can withstand that. Okay, fine. But all of a sudden, Kershaw's on the DL. Trevor Bauer has issues, which I think are going to go well beyond the 14 days that we know of in terms of suspension.
They're going to extend that.
So all of a sudden, the Dodgers, it's crazy, but Dodgers are starting pitching wanting as they head toward the trade deadline. Now look, they got plenty of talent in the minor leagues. They can go out and get somebody. They can plug the gap. But it's the Ivan Drago, right? He's cut, right? He's a man, not a machine. Well, the Dodgers, they are not a machine. They are men. And whatever's going on in that San Francisco clubhouse right now, on and off the field, is working. They are still in first place at the time that we have this discussion. Really, and it's phenomenal, and it speaks so well of everything that's going on, general manager on down.
It feels like the Giants are playing with house money at the moment.
Correct.
And there is something to be said about the Dodgers having these troubles for the morale of the team. Just because when you start losing pieces, sure, they can go out. They have a lot of money. They could go out and plug the gaps, as you said. But there's something about taking away that championship team that starts to kind of wear down, I think, on the morale of these guys, thinking, hey, we're just going to come right back. Well, you're not. No, you're not. And quite frankly, this whole Trevor Bauer situation couldn't have come at a worse time for those guys. All right? People told them about this guy. Don't sign him. Remember that? Don't sign him.
And now upset the apple cart.
Yeah. Don't. What are you doing, right? You have a winning formula. So beside all the awful things that we could talk about, just as a baseball thing only, I think it was a bad sign for them as a team, and now they're paying for it.
And to what extent will they pay for it going forward, right? And again, that's a whole can of worms discussion.
It's bad mojo, man.
It's terrible mojo, and the clubhouse has to suffer because of it, right? And there have to be people inside that clubhouse who are now looking to the top and saying, yeah, maybe you could have seen this coming.
Right.
This was not the right thing to do.
It's kind of like, what are you guys, the West Coast Mets? There's some people who have made some really bad people decisions. And I'm talking about what kind of a guy you're bringing into the clubhouse. I don't want a guy like that in my clubhouse. And you're the GM. You're supposed to know this kind of stuff because, okay, let's just say that you don't care about, and you should care about, you don't care about anyone's feelings. What about on a pure baseball standpoint? You don't want a bad guy in your clubhouse. You don't.
Nope. Look, it remains to be seen, and we may never know the extent of exactly what the collateral damage is inside the Dodger clubhouse because of Trevor Bauer. But you bring it back to the Giants, and it's the anti that situation, right? Clubhouse chemistry is off the charts. And again, we've talked off air about this, but the buy-in, right? The buy-in of the veterans, the Poseys, the Longorias, the Crawfords, the Belts, it had to happen for this to occur, right? And I think that it started to happen last year. I know Posey wasn't, he opted out. He wasn't part of the day-to-day. But I think whatever happened last year, I think you saw some veteran buy-in. You saw Brandon Crawford appreciate that even at 34 years old, he can learn new things. He can tinker the swing. He can get better, right? A lot of 34-year-olds, especially guys who have been all-stars, have been world champions, they're not amenable to that. Like, I know what I'm doing, right? I'm worth $68 million. I got it. I got this. I don't need you to tell me how to swing it back. But they have listened. And they have gotten better. Like, this is not an accident, what's going on. Now, can Crawford, hit another 18 home runs in the second half? I have my doubts, right? I think that the wear and tear and the dog days and the attrition, and I'm sure they will give him some more time off down the stretch. But the fact that we're even talking about a 30 home run season from Brandon Crawford, and oh, by the way, he's got 7 steals. I mean, Brandon Crawford, 30 and 15?
Right. Oh, it's incredible.
Unbelievable.
It's nice to go see someone that I know from a long time ago. 2012, 2014.
Your boys.
Seems like from 2014, which I don't know, it kind of seems like a long time ago now, right?
It was a long time ago.
Yeah. And it's nice to go see this. And we talked about this before, Scott, but what about the small thing about people come out to the yard to see names they know? These guys can be transition guys until we start knowing Wilmer Flores. You start knowing people who are performing, right? So they came out for Posey and they found the Wilmer Flores on the way. You know what I mean? Like, there's got to be a
Is that
bridge,
like a country music
right?
song?
It sounds like one, right? It sounds like people have to come out for something and then they get hooked. You bring them all in, right?
Well, yes. And let's be clear, Wilmer Flores is not suddenly going to become an all-star regular.
Yeah.
But the role players have been so good in terms of complimenting the guys who are getting the big bucks. And, frankly, you never bemoan guys like Crawford, Belt, Posey getting, the mega $1 million contracts that they have enjoyed for the last however many years. They earned it. Yeah. However, they weren't, the numbers did not live up to the dollars, right? I mean, it's just that there was a decline. We saw it with Buster. We saw it with Brandon. Belt, not so much. It's been more injuries. And that's the fascinating part, is the decline has been summarily reversed, and now they're worth every penny of what they are being paid, and they are no longer transition players, right? Now they're, again, the stars that they are being paid to be, and those are the teams that, that succeed, whether you're big market or small market. If guys play up to or exceed their contracts, you're going to have success. If guys do not perform to the extent that they're contracted, they're not what they're worth, right? Not, you know what I'm saying. So,
yeah, well, I mean, you make a good point. I call them transition players, and you're saying no, they're actually the stars. That's a very good point.
I think you could have called them that a year ago when the Giants were, and also ran. I think that if the Giants were to have, if they were on pace for what Vegas expected, which was 74 wins, then I think that's exactly, look, these are the guys, they're the transition guys from the old guard to where are we going to be in 2022 when we shed them all from the roster and start over and start paying younger players a lot of money. Now, all of a sudden, they're stars again.
Right. You said something that really always piques my interest, and I think that every sports fan secretly kind of cheers for the role players. Okay, because, I don't know, you have the guys on the team that are going to get all the pub. But the working class everyman always cheers for, this guy who's not expected to do much all of a sudden is hitting out of his mind. That's really attractive to when a team starts gelling and the role players, like when Steve Kerr to Michael Jordan, you know what I mean? That guy. That's so attractive to me that these guys, it's always been attractive that the guy who you don't expect is all of a sudden playing well. And that has to do with chemistry, in my opinion. The main guys are playing so well that the guys who are brought in as support, so to speak, feel like I have to do my part, even in a small way, and that's awesome.
It's human nature, right? That you hit on it. It's every man, right? It's easy to root for those guys, because they're not the $30 million a year guys, right? There's a relatable quality because that guy's only making $3 million, so I can certainly relate to him. But
who's your favorite everyman?
Well, other than Sal Castaneda?
Yeah, I was going to say the Sal Castaneda to Dennis Richmond. Because go with me here. But all three of us worked at the same station. When I came in and I was hired as the traffic reporter, and then I became a general assignment reporter. And the very first time that I went out on a live shot and Dennis Richmond tossed to me, I was very proud of that. Now, Dennis Richmond was the Michael Jordan, and I was a Steve Kerr or somebody else, like the guy who, played well, but basically Dennis Richmond is the guy. Same thing. We all can relate to that. So, I don't know. There have been a lot of famous everymans on these teams. Who's yours?
If you're talking about the Giants, just to narrow it down, over the last 10 years, Cody Ross for me is the guy.
Yeah.
What he did on the field, in the clubhouse.
You don't go Pat Burrell?
I don't go Pat Burrell. I know one too many Pat Burrell stories for that to be applicable. But I'm also biased because my son is Cody Reese. So how could I not love Cody Ross?
Yeah, Cody.
Right?
Yeah. No, I mean, and obviously that was such a magical time where he hit out of his mind and he played really well. He made some amazing catches, and everyone remembers Cody Ross in those years. But yeah, getting back to the players, do you think it's the manager who gets these guys to ball? Or what is it? Is it the other players playing well? How do we get to this point? Is it Gabe Kapler who's doing this?
I think it's the buy-in. So I think that by association, right, I think it is Gabe Kapler, because Gabe Kapler has assembled this ridiculously enormous coaching staff, right? They got like 14 coaches, which, on one hand, you're like, what the hell? Nobody does that. But you know what? The Giants are forward thinking. They're doing things differently, whether it's analytics and that sort of thing. And it's working. And these guys obviously have relationships that have resulted in positive transformations for some of these players. So I think it's the buy-in by the veterans, and I alluded to that earlier. And it's the fact that they have not brought in, any jackass players. I mean, these are, it's good guys.
It's a real thing.
Chemistry matters.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
It really matters, right? And again, you find out what's going on down in LA right now. So I think it's all of it. So I think Gabe Kapler gets credit, Farhan Zaidi gets credit, and I give a ton of credit to the guys like Brandon Crawford who are willing to tweak, willing to try to get better. Now, look, let's be honest. He's got a lot of incentive to get better this year. Right? Brandon Crawford's a free agent, right, and he has made himself a lot of money in the last 3 months.
Yeah,
right?
Sometimes guys need that, right?
And sometimes they do.
That's just human nature. On contract year,
yep,
you want to show the team what you're doing, and that happens to everybody.
Yeah. Well, it's not happening to Javi Baez. So, I mean, that's...
Right.
He's hitting 230 and he's playing for a contract, and so not everybody is able to rise to the occasion.
Not everyone can do it,
right?
Right. And we had the conversation briefly, but I want to ask you. Let's just say that Crawford does end up putting up numbers that make him very valuable, but there are other shortstops on the market coming through. So do the Giants keep what they have? Do they bring someone up? Does some other team make Crawford an offer? What happens to him?
That's going to be one of the fascinating storylines, and not only because you're talking about an all-star player in a walk year who is 34, right? Mm-hmm. So that obviously limits the duration that he's going to be offered on the free agent market, but you're also talking about Brandon Crawford, right? He's a special guy because he's the hometown kid. If ever there was a guy who you would expect would be willing to take the hometown discount, right, and retire with the Giants, clearly it's Brandon Crawford. Now, there's a complication, and the complication is a guy named Marco Luciano, who is, by all accounts, the next big thing. A bona fide, can't-miss superstar who will be in San Francisco by 2023, and he's a shortstop. So he is the future of that position, right? And unless something strange happens, there will not be room in a year and a half for Brandon Crawford to still be an everyday player on this team. So if you're Crawford, do you take a 2-year deal with the Giants knowing you're the guy for one more year, and then you become that transition guy at age 36, the mentor, the play second base, play shortstop, play third, whatever you do to get in the lineup 4 times a week, and I could see that happen.
Another fascinating thing is, how many times have we been told that this guy's the guy? Okay? How many times have we been told, this guy's the guy, that guy's the guy? I won't name names, I don't want to embarrass anyone, but guys have been the guy, and then they're not the guy.
And then they're not the guy.
Right? So I really want, as a Giants fan, I want Luciano to be the guy. Is he really going to be the guy? Maybe because I'm cynical. Let's see. I hope so. But I've been, disappointed before. To use the word disappointed before.
It's funny. That makes me think, if I may go on a tangent.
Let's
this
go.
is a podcast, so we can do that. When you talk about, sometimes the guy is not the guy, but everybody, treats him as such and just makes assumptions. So I have, along with a lot of other people during the pandemic, I have rediscovered my love for baseball cards, right? I've got a huge collection, and, I had a lot of time on my hands last summer.
Throw them out?
Mom didn't throw them out, kept them all, kept them in good shape. And I have sort of begun to dabble a little bit in, actually flipping and buying and selling and kind of getting involved with this market because, it's such a smoking hot, the collectibles market is through the roof, right? And the thing that perhaps amazes me the most is that you can buy a rookie card of a Hall of Famer from the 80s, a Tom Glavine, a John Smoltz, a Jeff Bagwell, a Jim Thome for $3. No problem, right? But if you want a Marco Luciano card that has his autograph on it and is of a certain make, you might have to pay $2,000 for it.
You're kidding.
And the kid is 20 years old, never sniffed the major leagues, and to your point, possibly won't, right? I mean, everybody expects him to be the guy, but things happen.
So what is the upside, if I may ask, of getting that card and paying $2,000 for it?
Because if he becomes Mike Trout or Juan Soto or Ronald Acuna, then it's going to be worth $10,000, right? That's the thinking. And these.
And are they?
And some of them are. But it fascinates me to see the money that people will pay for prospect cards.
Wow.
And even, again, kids that are 20, kids that aren't on the cusp, right? Wander Franco, I get it. He was coming up any day, any week, right? So we knew his arrival was imminent. Mm-hmm. But there are guys who are in single A. There's a kid named Jason Dominguez who's, they compare him to Mike Trout in terms of skill set, right? And that's obviously a lofty comparison. He's a Yankees prospect, but he just entered pro baseball. He's in single A for his first reps of pro ball. He's 2 years away at least. But this guy, you wouldn't know it from the market for his cards. That's fascinating.
That's fascinating.
Right?
That is.
But you can go get yourself, a Jeff Bagwell, Jim Thome, rookie for a couple of bucks. That to me is insulting.
That's weird.
Yeah.
That's weird. But I guess it's just
it's the speculation. It's the excitement of the
add
speculation.
that to another thing I don't understand. Bitcoin and
I
mean, I actually might understand Bitcoin better than those cards. You said something very interesting about.
I doubt that highly.
Very interesting about these players that have come up and maybe have not materialized. Do you think the pressure to be the next guy sometimes gets in their head?
I think it's got to vary, right? I mean, that goes to the makeup of each individual. There are guys who will respond to and thrive under that pressure, right? And there are guys who will buckle under it, and you see that at every level of every sport. So I don't think you can make, a sort of a general statement about that. I think, if you look at the top 100 prospects in baseball, maybe 40 to 50 of them are going to become great, really good to all-star caliber players, and 40 to 50 of them won't, and some of them will have a cup of coffee and be banished and never heard from. So I think there's all kinds of reasons for that.
So who has the toughest scouting job is it NBA, baseball, or football? I've always wondered that too.
Wow.
Because
that's a good question.
There's some general managers in basketball, Phoenix Suns, Atlanta Hawks, who have been killing it, right?
I would look at that probably. I would answer that from a standpoint of roster makeup, and I would say probably basketball, because there's only 5 guys on the court. Right? There's only 12 on an active roster. There's 15 on your roster. You screw up basketball for a few years, right? It's whereas one baseball player, there's 70 rounds of a baseball draft. Mm-hmm. So you're going to miss on a lot of those. Mm-hmm. So the misses are less of a big deal. Now, you miss on first rounders a couple years in a row, it's going to set you back. But I think just the breadth of players. You got 6 minor league affiliates. You got so many players in the pipeline, right?
And you have more cushion for them to get to their level.
Right. And there's that as well. There's the stepping stones and whatnot. So my instinct, and again, I'd have to probably think that through, but my gut answer for that is the smaller the roster, the higher the pressure to get it right.
Well, we saw that with the Chris Cohan Warriors.
Right. And look at the Knicks. Until this year, what have the Knicks been for 10, 15 years, right? I mean, it's been New York, right? One of the preeminent franchises in America, and they've been garbage.
Right. Wow. So, I mean, you're saying there's hope for the Charlotte Hornets.
Charlotte Hornets. Yeah, yes. I think there's a lot of hope for the Charlotte Hornets.
Right. I'm thinking of the Five Sons Brewery. They're not giving me anything.
Which again is fine because it's after 12.
Yeah. I went out there, Martinez, and did a story on them. So it's Five Sons, just like the Phoenix Suns. So when I worked for KTVU, I basically had to go to a couple of breweries and taste the beer.
That's
terrible.
Rough. Yeah, that's
terrible work.
Just to be clear, are they a sponsor of the show at this point?
They should be.
They should be.
Because
we've just given them.
We gave them a free plug.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right, Tibbs, you're on that. You're writing this down.
Yeah. I'm on everything.
Okay. Yeah, that's part of the problem.
There is one more thing. I know that we're. It looks like we might be wrapping up soon. But there's one thing.
25.
There's one thing that I do want to bring up. And we talked about it last time, but that podcast did not make air because of all the profanity. But what about the idea that the Giants, and I heard this somewhere today, that the Giants want to bring someone like an Aaron Judge in because they want to put butts in the seats, and they would mortgage a lot of what they're doing. In fact, Yaz was mentioned as one of the trade people and some other people, and some people are saying, absolutely not. Are you kidding me? But some people are saying, hey, look where the team is. You want to be a buyer at the deadline. And
the Giants, I assume I have to look at Judge's contract, but I assume he is under team control for another couple of years.
Right.
And that is why the speculation starts, because the Giants are not going to go out and get a high-priced rental and mortgage their future.
No, we've seen that before. It fails almost every time.
Right. If the Giants make a move, it is going to be with an eye toward 2021, 2022, 2023. So, if that is the basis for the discussion and you think you can get a player the caliber of Aaron Judge, sure. I am sure they would investigate. They would listen. Are they going to trade Luciano? No. Are they going to trade Elliot Ramos? No. And it would probably take one of those guys to get Judge. So I'm sure it's a non-starter.
Right.
That's an interesting conversation. That's certainly one we'll touch more on as we get more toward July 31st. But since we only have a couple of minutes here, and we did mention at the top we're going to talk Giants and A's, I feel like we would be remiss if we did not at least...
Why not?
Right.
Because recently yesterday I spoke with Dave Stewart. He was on our show in the morning, and we talked a little bit about the A's and the whole Howard Terminal thing and how the team is still playing well despite some of off-field distractions. So, what about the A's fans? Do you think that the fans, even if this team does well, is there always going to be something in the back of their head saying, just like with the Raiders, man, I don't know if I should invest in this because this team could be gone, and it's such a bad feeling as a sports fan to be feeling that because you can't even enjoy the highs. It's a great team.
Are you suggesting they might not be rooted in Oakland?
They might be
because the sign says
I think they've stopped seeing that hashtag quietly on Twitter.
Needless to say, it goes without saying. I hope that never happens. I hope they're here forever. The fans deserve it. The area, the city deserves it. Oakland, Lord knows, after losing the Raiders, sort of losing the Warriors, right? They deserve to have this team they can hang their hat on. I hope it gets done, gondola or not. I would love to see that ballpark come to fruition for so many reasons, right? To answer your question, I think they're used to it. I think Oakland fans have been beaten down, right? And so it's human nature that would creep into their kind of collective psyche. But that said, they're all in, right? I mean, this fan base is passionate. I think they love the A's. They're behind the A's. We would like to see more butts in the seats, but that's just the way it is on a Tuesday night at Oakland Coliseum.
The other night, on a Tuesday night in San Francisco, they had 19,000. So there was a time in San Francisco when even on a Tuesday night,
you would have had
40,000,
yep,
right?
No doubt.
So that is kind of by nature what happens. I think the A's are an exciting team.
They're very exciting.
It's great to see them holding the Astros kind of at bay a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the spread is growing a little bit. And again, we'll see a couple days before the break. It's annoying because you can hate on the Astros and you can go back to the sign stealing and all the cheating and everything else. But the fact remains, I look at them much like I look at the Dodgers. That roster is really, really good, right? And the offense, the pitching. I think that the bullpen probably needs one more arm, but who doesn't? You know, and they'll go out and get somebody. But the Astros are really, really good. So you put the roster of Houston and the roster of Oakland, it's close, right? I think the Astros may be just a smidge better top to bottom. It's really close. But there's so much at stake. And again, this is something we'll get into over the summer, but you know, the A's could very well wind up with second best record in the American League, and you know what? They're going to play one game to continue their season, and we know how that can go because we've seen it time and time again. Now, the difference this year is they have two guys who you can put the ball in their hand and say, go win me one game, and I feel pretty good about their chances.
They don't have to bring in somebody.
They're not starting Liam Hendricks.
Right.
You know, they're not. It's not an opener. They're not. This is right now. You give me Sean Manaea, you give me Chris Bassett for one game, and I feel pretty good about their chances.
Right.
Now I say the same thing about Lance McCullers. I could say the same thing about or Keedy for Houston. The guys that they're running out there too. So again, other teams, they won't play the Astros in that one game. Point being, it's a shame that they are so good and yet could wind up being second fiddle again in that division.
Which team's pitching falters first? That's
Houston or Oakland?
Oh, yeah. Because that's what it all comes down to.
Yeah, it does.
You're going to have a situation in August during the dog days for every team to start getting a little bit tired.
I think that the A's...
Because the A's bullpen, as you know...
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably thinking this through too much.
Right.
I think that the A's bullpen needs another lockdown arm, just like I think the Astros bullpen does. I think that both rotations are solid. I think James Kapralian has given them a legitimate guy upside guy, whose ERA is already under 3, right, at the back of the rotation. So, does Mike Fiers come back? That's a depth piece that I think would really help them because you want to have 6 starters heading into August and September. But I think the Astros are just as deep. And if they stay, they haven't been healthy, right? McCullers was hurt, Odorizzi's hurt. Verlander's the X factor. I mean, is there any chance he comes back in September? So, I think that both teams are in the same boat when it comes to starting pitching. I think it's a push.
I think if Verlander comes back, there's no way he can be Verlander again, if you know what I mean.
No, but even if he comes back and gives you 2 or 3 innings, and is it imagine having that option in the 6th inning of a 2-2 game, right?
Again, here we go with the psyche again, right? Here we go with in the clubhouse.
Right.
You have Verlander coming back that says something.
Right. So again, this is stuff we'll talk to as we get it further into the summer. But I think the reason we spend the lion's share of the time when you're talking about is this sustainable, talking Giants instead of A's, because look, the A's are where we thought they would be, and I think everybody would answer yes, of course this is sustainable. They're on pace to win about 98 games, and they will. If you ask me how many games are the A's going to win this year, I'd say probably 95, 96, right? I think that's probably around the number, and that's going to get them in the playoffs. The only question is, will it get them a division and get them sitting on their couches or in their caves watching that wild card game where they're gonna have to suit up for that again and let the chips fall where they may.
Last thing to end on: if the A's end up having a really great year and the fan support comes out, it actually might help what's going on off the field.
Sure,
it always does.
Yeah, no, of course. I'm so tired of this process. I mean. They were supposed to be playing baseball in Howard Terminal in a year and a half. Right? At that time, what's that timetable now? Best case scenario. If they decide tomorrow we're a go for the new ballpark, what are we talking, 2025?
Well, can you imagine if the A's stunk? This would be going absolutely nowhere. So, I mean...
Well, and, the problem with the A's is there is always that specter of possibility 2 years down the road, right? And, I mean, I don't want to throw water on this, and this is, again, another discussion, but, Chapman, Olsen, Bassett, Manaea, the foundations of this team, are they all going to be here in 2 years? Because we know the A's
It's kind of like a win now situation.
It's always a win now. Now, to their credit, they tend to, make more out of less, and Billy Beane is a genius when it comes to that and putting together a roster. So, you certainly can see a situation where they're still competitive even if the roster's depleted, but there's a real good chance this roster is not going to look like this in 2 years, and they might be a third-place team instead of a first/second-place team. And then what does that do? So just get this done. Right now you're good. You've got momentum on the field. Couple of years of the playoffs. Just get it done. Figure one way or the other, get it done. And the the constant influx of road bumps is just frustrating.
Well, I hope you, Jason, and I are having a beer one day at Howard Terminal
One
Stadium,
day,
whatever they want to call
I
it.
was going to say, 5 minutes.
About
we're
5
having
minutes
a
from
beer.
now at the Howard Terminal Ballpark. That'd be awesome. It's real close to where I happen to work. You know where that is, so it'd be awesome to have baseball in Oakland, real close, and have two good teams with two great stadiums. That would be a jewel for the Bay Area.
It would be
That's what we want.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to want it. We'll see. Again, we'll get Cavill in here one of these days.
That'd be nice. He'd probably come.
He's a great guy. Loves talking about all this in A's baseball, and
He's straightforward. He'd probably come.
He is. So we'll put that on Jason's to-do list. For number 1, shave. Number 2, get Dave Cavill.
Exactly, boys.
All right.
All right, let's wrap it up.
All right. So we're being told to wrap it. This is the maiden voyage of the Sports Cave, the Sports Cave podcast.
I like it. Do you have some sort of an animal head hanging up? What is that?
Yeah.
It's a cow head.
Okay. All right. Cool. I've never felt so masculine.
That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, PETA on line 1. That's fantastic. Anyway, look forward to installment 2. Good time, Sal. Appreciate it, man.
All right, Scott.
All right, see ya.
Cool.